Oh my God, how nice was that? What an awesome intro from Maricela. It's always nice to open up the line with words of wisdom and the power of prayer to get us through this time that we're living in the plague. Living in this holy biblical time of the plague. What are we in now? We're in what? Year 3? Year 3 of the pandemic?
Um, Almost 3. Next year will be 3.
I would say it started what? Wuhan 2019. What was it? October 2019?
It started March, much earlier than that.
No, you thinking 2020. I'm talking about 2019.
March, because I remember.
I'm saying it's year 3.
Okay.
And then we got this new variant coming out. And it looks like they're going to start putting more safety measures in place.
Well, they're going to put safety measures, but it's enough to get everybody scared. But basically, everybody should know what to do now. Wear your mask, get vaccinated, stay 6 inches apart, do everything that you was doing before. It's hard for some people, but that's how we're going to heal.
Are you going to go back hiding in the house?
No, I'm out now.
So you can't go back? Once you're out, you can't go back?
I just know I'm precautious. I know that I can't go into big crowds.
You was just in a big crowd the other day.
I came and sat down. I went right downstairs. Too much. I know I can't be in big crowds. I know that I have to distance myself from people. Well, you can't kiss people like before.
That's true. Or else I haven't been kissing anybody since the pandemic. Have you been kissing anybody?
No.
You more like elbow bump, foot bump, or the booty bump?
No booty bump for me.
We got jokes. Don't take personal. So, we're now reviewing the increase of mental health issues plagued in the Black community since this pandemic, which I think mental health was already there.
Well, we had mental health for a very long time, but one thing about in our Black community, we don't want to deal with this subject because to know that we're cray-cray, no, it doesn't sit well with African Americans. We feel that, no, nobody's going to say we crazy. And, crazy, it's not crazy to be depressed because sometimes those things happen. It's not the crazy because you're bipolar. Sometimes that's the adjustment in our body chemistry, and it's not crazy to be schizophrenia. And we just have to know with counseling and medication, many of these things we can change. And I think now that everybody's been in the house and they really have to deal with themselves, it's like looking in the mirror. Look at yourself a little bit, man. It gets you depressed. You get down. Because sometimes you don't feel that you're supposed to be in a certain way in life, but you're not there yet. And sometimes it can get us depressed. And sometimes it's also when we don't have interaction with other people, it's a problem because we're just talking to ourselves. And hey, remember they said if you talk to yourself, gotta watch that. It only bothers you when guess what? That person answer back. So it mental issues is real. It happens to each one of us. Sometimes I can be down and depressed, but then you have to find ways, alternative to get it back together.
So let's read off some of this statistics from the American Psychological Association. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
American Psychological Association. Did I say that right? Can you read it? Read that, Marisol.
American Psychological Association.
Okay,
Very
I'm
good.
going to read something from the American Psychological Association. So here's some of the statistics. Nearly 34 million people identify themselves as African American. 22% live in poverty. Okay, we already knew that. They also represent the majority of the homeless population, people incarcerated, and children in foster care and child welfare system and victims of serious violent crimes. 40% of the youth in the criminal justice system and 45% of children in foster care make up of African Americans. Over 25% of African American youth are exposed to violence and have proven to be at high risk for post-traumatic stress disorder. That's according to the Surgeon General in 2001. African Americans are also nearly twice as likely as non-Hispanic whites to be diagnosed with schizophrenia. African Americans are twice as likely to have diabetes than whites, substantially more likely to die of a stroke, and around 10% more likely to have some form of heart disease. Those are the statistics of how mental health can affect you physically. Okay, we can pause that. And record now. So, Danny, I want to welcome you to the show with me and Maricela. It's great having you, a fellow friend from up north, and a family member down here in the South. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Danny. Government name is Daniel. I'm Maryland.
You trying to hide from the audience? You trying to hide?
I'm trying to hide. No. I'm from Maryland. I grew up in Maryland, born in New York. Just like you. You and Maricela, born in the Bronx, New York, spent a lot of time there as a youth and a teenager, but raised in Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland, and down to the Sunshine State in 2011 permanently to further my education. And once I got my master's degree in hospitality, I decided to stick around because the North was way too cold, especially them harsh winters. And now I am a college professor here at Miami-Dade College and here in downtown Miami, teaching hospitality. And I also full-time run a workforce development program called the Hospitality Institute. We target the inner city adults and help them get training in hospitality and culinary, and has helped them with job placement. And one of the big components is helping them with life skills. So a lot of our students come from very, very challenging life circumstances due to long-term incarceration, addictions, all sorts of things. So we sort of kind of try to rehab them in a way as much as we can, because we're not, psychologists, but try to help them and help them become successful. So that's kind of what I do, and that's sort of what makes me feel great.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds very rewarding.
It is very rewarding, even though it's the 9 to 5 type of schedule. It's never boring. I meet students constantly. Some of them have changed for the best and changed for the better, and I don't even recognize them nowadays because I remember what they were like at the beginning and how they are now. There's some students that fall back and have to be reined back in to get back on track, but it's very, very rewarding when you are in a position and you can change the life of somebody else. There's no greater feeling. When someone, especially at a graduation, they look you in the eye and they're bawling and, they're thanking you, because you helped them, whether, you gave them some words of encouragement or the rest of the team, provided extra training, whatever it is, when you can help somebody, get their life back on track and be a better person, there's no greater feeling.
So you basically giving people a second chance at life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Second chance, third chance, because, we all need help somewhere along the line. So giving people, a chance. And thankfully, my program has been the Hospitality Institute. It actually started in Overtown by a local hotel owner named Julie Grimes. She owns 3 Hilton hotels here in South Florida. She started the Institute in Overtown to try and combat the growing need for workforce in Miami back in 2008 or whatever it was, because hotels were getting ready to outsource employees from other countries. So she actually started it, and thank God we've been funded for a long time for a grant program to be funded for over 2008, 2018. Been funded for nearly almost 14 years. So that's a very, very long time. And we've been able to continue our programs and what we do. Obviously, COVID, threw a monkey wrench in the last 2 years of what we do. But, we had to restructure and figure out how we can continue what we do just in a virtual platform. And thankfully, we've been able to make modifications. But we've been around a very, very long time.
So you said that you were born in the Bronx. So where in the Bronx exactly?
I was born in, Einstein Hospital. So both of my parents are from New York. They're born in Manhattan and raised in Manhattan and in the Bronx. So I was born in Einstein and lived off of Teller Avenue, which is right around the corner from Taft High School.
So you in the South? That's the South Bronx?
Yeah, that's like the Mount Eden section,
South
Bronx or whatever.
So you were north of Yankee Stadium?
Not too far. Actually, the address is right by, I think that is Taft High School, right off of the concourse on 170th Street. So my parents and my grandmother and my grandfather, they all lived right off of Teller Avenue. So they were like in between Webster Avenue and the Grand Concourse. But right over there, I can't even remember the other street, but my grandfather, they live on Teller Avenue, and then I had cousins that lived just a few blocks north. So that's where we lived until my parents decided they wanted to move to Maryland because they wanted a better life for their future, for their kids and whatnot. So
how old were you when you left the Bronx?
I must have been like 2 years old. So we moved to Mount Rainier, Maryland, which is right outside D.C. in PG County at the time. And then my other sister, Danielle, she was born in the Bronx too, but we moved as well. And then my youngest sister, Dee Dee, she was born in D.C. So a lot of the early years, I remember the Bronx very well because even though we moved to Maryland, we had so much family in New York.
So you would go back.
Yeah,
like summers
we would go
and
back
stuff.
constantly. So there were times, when my parents were probably getting their feet wet, living in the D.C. area in Maryland, that we would spend, a summer or a month or two with, my grandparents or some of my cousins, because they all lived around 170th Street in the Grand Concourse.
And D.C. is kind of rough too. They got ghettos in D.C. too. But you were in Maryland, right?
She's outside
we were
of D.C.
in Maryland, so we were in PG. So at the time, from what I remember, we were in PG County. So if you know the D.C. area map, PG County is on the surrounds DC on the left side of the border. So, but we lived in like sort of, I want to say North PG County, and at that time it was a very different neighborhood. It's nothing like it is now. Right now it's very, a lot of Latinos from Central America, particularly El Salvador, a lot of blacks that live around there, a lot of Africans, particularly Nigerians, they live in that area and whatnot. But at that time it was, still kind of predominantly white. So the area that we lived in was really pretty safe. So we left Mount Rainier, I can't exactly remember when. We left Mount Rainier, and 1994 is when we actually moved to Silver Spring, Maryland. So a lot of my early years, a lot of my memories is being in New York a lot with cousins and whatnot, and then also being in Maryland because we went to private school in Maryland until we moved to Silver Spring. Also, a lot of my early years, I spent a lot of time with my uncle because he was going to Howard University at the time, back in the early 90s or late 80s, early 90s. So that's a lot of my early memories of New York. And then once we moved to Silver Spring, I began to spend just usually the summers in New York with my grandmother in the Bronx.
And which college did you go to?
Which college did I go to?
Yeah. Which college?
College, I went to Montgomery College in Montgomery County, Maryland, and then I transferred to UDC, which is University of District of Columbia. It's HBCU in Northwest DC. And then once I graduated there, a year later, that's when I moved here and went to FIU.
Excellent. So I know we allowed you to pick the topic for tonight. So was there any in particular reason why you picked mental health to discuss this evening?
Well, I've been looking at a lot of things on TV and social media and, watching a lot of stuff the last year. Obviously, COVID has allowed us to take some time to reflect on a lot of things. And it's been a long time coming. And mental health is very, very real. I mean, I'm hearing stories of just, just you hear it in the news, celebrities passing away at, early ages unexpectedly. Just yesterday, my coworker said someone committed suicide on the metro rail. People are popping off in grocery stores. People are fighting at airports. You're seeing all kind of just unraveling, everywhere in the world. And for me, looking back, all of it stems, as some kind of root pain inside themselves, and when it goes untreated, this is what you get.
The pain, the pain body.
Say it again.
The pain body, childhood trauma that's repressed, and then you're walking around with the
childhood
pain.
Trauma, or even things that, just things that have happened to you, whether it was caused by family or somewhere else or a bad experience, you're seeing it, or a lack of foundation, you're seeing it pop up everywhere, and it's affecting, tons of people and the behaviors and the decisions that they make. So, I know for me, just watching everything, I was like, good Lord, this world is getting crazy.
And I've always been, I would say, more sympathetic towards men of color in America.
Yeah.
Because of, I don't know what that experience is like to have to, be a man, African American man, here and live in a country where you're just not wanted. You're not wanted. Yeah. You're not respected. You're not appreciated. You're hardly tolerated. Underpaid.
Yep.
Disrespected.
Yeah, it's tough out there. I mean, being a black man in this country. I mean, I'm fortunate to have great, role models in my family, my father, my uncle, cousins, and whatnot. We're always doing the right thing and whatnot. They were, my dad, he's more disciplinarian than my mom, but just, having strict and having a stable upbringing and, thank God, my parents wanted more for me and my, siblings or whatnot. When we moved to Maryland, they got us active in sports. They got us doing different things, playing piano. I played the trumpet. I played piano, doing all kind of little league, all that stuff, trying to get a normal childhood for something that they didn't get, growing up in New York City, So I'm grateful for that. And then, and obviously education, the biggest thing, going to college, taught a lot, you're not just going to school for degree, but you go there for experience and you learn about people and where they come from and whatnot. So having all of that, that experience and whatnot,
so
and then obviously seeing what, go ahead.
I guess I'm curious to think, what is your safety zone? Like, where's your safe zone? You know what I mean? Where do you find that where you say, I actually feel safe and I know I'm okay here?
But then also, I just thought of something. In the wake of George Floyd, do you really feel safe in this environment now?
Do I feel safe?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I can't say that I can't say that I feel safe, because you don't know at any moment. Doesn't matter. And this is so funny, because sometimes people, their impression of me, that they think I'm preppy or bougie or this or that or whatever. But I'm not in a greater, safer, safe space as any, than the other person who's not, doing what they're supposed to do or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, that I'm seen as a black man, regardless if I'm refined or not, or if I'm unwell or I'm seen as a black man. So there really is not a safe space. I mean, you see it now, like even last year, the young girl that in New York I guess the term is now Karen, the young girl that accused the young black boy of taking her phone in the hotel, and the young kid was the son of a Grammy artist. So I mean, like, seriously, I mean, if that's happening in a hotel, there's no going to say it can't happen to me, or happen to somebody else that's up to no good or just innocently in the way, So there's really not a safe space
So
or whatever.
if you don't have a safe zone or a safe space, does that mean that? So are you constantly living in a state of fear or paranoia? Are you constantly?
No, not that either. It's just, I guess I would say is I'm grateful, like I said, with my upbringing, but I always have the conscious of knowing that something could happen. So I have to pick and choose my surroundings and where I go and who I hang out with and, different places, and that's sort of, and mentally that's the safe space that I go to recognize that, like, even now, like Miami Beach and South Beach, I stay away from Ocean Drive. I don't even want to go near it because I know something is going to happen, or eventually, or I don't want to get caught in a crossfire, so I kind of adjust myself in times and places of where I, want to be or whatnot to avoid any kind of, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm antisocial, but I want to be able to avoid any potential issues or whatever. So, like, for example, when I go running in the exercise, I go running early in the morning when the sun is coming up. Why? Because nobody's out there in the streets. I can go do my run in peace, don't have to worry about no, crazy drunk driver or, police or this or that. I could do that, Or, for example, if I see, too many people, I don't want to say I get claustrophobic, but when I see there's too much of a crowd, I go the opposite direction. I'm going to get caught in the crossfire, and that's something that's, that's kind of always been my personality. I've never been the type of person to, like, go hang out at a nightclub. My sisters, they used to do that in their younger days or whatever, but I just never been that type of person. That's just not my style or whatever. So I guess you would say me having that conscious is the safe space that I go to. There's going to be too many people there. You never know what's going to happen.
So you try to stay in a more controlled environment.
Yeah,
a more controlled environment.
Like, for example, like even growing up, in high school in Maryland, I don't know if you guys know about go-go music, but go-go music is very popular in the DC area. That's where it came from. So, a lot of kids used to go to go-go parties or have go-go bands and this and that, and go-go music is predominantly black music. And, that kind of type of music would generate, true fans, and then also it would generate people that just come there to cause problems, So I knew that in my head, so I was like, nah, I don't want to go do that, be in that crowd or whatever. You never know what can pop off, and thankfully I didn't, because, there was one time my sister, she went to a party, and they had a go-go band, and then there was a shooting at the party. And my sister, ran away. Thankfully, it was in the neighborhood, but she ran away and got to safety, So it's just like picking and choosing your battles and knowing the advantages and disadvantages of where you go to and who you choose to surround yourself with, because you just never know, And
I know,
I'm not
like,
saying you should enjoy life, but
you can't live in fear, but there are a lot of, it's demonic out there, and there's always constantly things being thrown at you. And I know for myself, is my big thing is meditation. My thing is I do 2 hours of meditation, every Saturday, and that it cleanses me and it uplifts me. It gives me, but as soon as I go through meditation, within an hour or two, by the end of the day, something happens. You go to the store and something happens, just a trigger. And then you get your energy gets thrown off. So, what do you put in place? So your safety zone, you're saying you want a controlled environment is your safety zone, and what do you have to do when you get triggers or something like Ahmaud Arbery,
But then we were
I know that was really difficult for you.
And like we talk about safe space, with the black man. This has been a while now, like the Central Park 5. Also, you had that guy, Derek Bell.
Diablo.
He went to the club.
Diablo.
And Diablo. And
Gen 6.
And Gen 6. It's been, a lot of these people in safe places. Sometimes they came home from work. Sometimes they went to a club like Derek Bell. Central
Eric
Park.
Gardner.
Eric Gardner. He was selling Lucy's. He was trying to make a living. Might not be like the living we want, but he was trying to make a living. Also, Central Park 6, they were just going through the park. She was jogging.
Yeah.
So we.
Well, see, the thing for me is like
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that's helped me a lot is when I was in middle school, and I've shared this with Maricela. Me and my sisters were enrolled in the Police Activities League.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big thing. So if you don't know about the Police Activities League, the Police Activity League is a mentorship after school program that was led by police officers. So when I was there, I went there for like maybe 5 years or whatever after school, and police officers were our mentors. And like my parents, they would expose us to a lot of things too. They took us to the air. We went on field trips. They took us to the airport. We fed the homeless. We did, martial arts. We did a lot of different things. But one of the key things that they instilled in us, because there were a lot of other kids that were considered to be, I don't know if at risk is the term that they use, but now they say, what do they call it, Maricela? They say at opportunist or something like that. They don't use the term at risk anymore.
Yeah.
But a lot of the kids, it was mostly predominantly black, so a lot of the kids would go there, and then we have this mentorship with all these police officers. And there was one time I remember specifically, they would have a quiet study hall. So you go in there, you do your homework, no music allowed, okay, no borrowing someone's headphones or this or that, turn down the music, you're doing homework. And I remember one time, this one kid, he walked in, he had a hoodie on, and that was sort of like the first time that I was, starting to realize I can see why they're training us the way that they are. He told the kid, take your hoodie off, pull up your pants, and next time you come in here, come in with a belt or I'm sending you home. So all of those things, he tried to say, make yourself, present and this and that so that people can see you. When you walk in the street, people can see your face so you're not mistaken for somebody else. Now, that's not going to prevent an accident 100% of the time, but at least it makes you visible, And another thing that, I learned that my dad and mostly the guys on my dad's side of the family, them being in New York, you guys can attest to this, that, there's a barbershop on every corner.
Yeah.
Don't let hair grow out and make it look nappy. Go to the barbershop. So my uncle, especially when I would spend the summers up there, my Uncle Tony would send me, my cousins to the barbershop, the Puerto Rican barbershop, and go get a fresh haircut. It was $10 at the time, and go get a haircut every 10 weeks. So, you look decent. So at least look presentable and visible so that you're not mistaken for, or being prejudged as something else or whatever, So that was very, very important, and recognizing that, as I got older, I realized that, that I won't be perceived as dangerous or this or that. I need to look presentable, not just, for yourself, but just look presentable, in a public space so that you're not mistaken for somebody else.
And I know Trayvon Martin's father was talking about, too, about conflict resolution.
Right.
How to de-escalate a situation when and if
Right.
you're approached, so that you can, make it home alive. Because things can escalate as a black boy or black man here. Things can escalate very quickly.
Yeah. And you know what? I learned that. I had to learn that actually within the last year, I would say. With the election and everything, even social media, and even though it's social media, the lesson applies to everywhere. I had to learn to just keep my mouth shut. Don't say anything.
Well, especially on social media, because that whole it caused a lot of division within families. I know a lot of families, a lot of friends stop speaking, and enemies and stuff over politics, which is they already want the country divided, but then you let that happen to your family. It's sad.
Well, it just dawned on me the other day. So let me just finish that point about that with social media. I had to learn to keep my mouth shut, because I should not be getting into shouting matches with someone, because everything is energy, right? If we're looking at it like that, if everything is energy, and the energy that's out there and that's sent your direction, you don't have to accept it. So if somebody's mouthing off or popping off at you for what unbeknownst reason, I can choose to walk away. I don't have to deal with it. I don't need to get, like if you look at it as a recipe, I don't need to add this ingredient in my body as the recipe. in order for it to taste good. So I walk away, and I had to learn that in the last year, especially with the election and social media. And, so that's something that I had to learn in terms of de-escalating, certain situations. And Ayana Vanzis said it best: when you see crazy, you cross the street, So, but with the point you just made with the division that it's caused on social media, I thought about this the other day. As I heard a couple other people tell me, oh, don't let politics destroy your friendships or relationships. And I thought about it too. If you look at it as a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say you're in love with someone or whatever, and you're pursuing a relationship and this and that. When you pursue a relationship, you're looking for a person that shares possibly the same values in life and beliefs and whatnot, and so you can create a wonderful relationship. To me, that applies to friendship as well. So if you idolize, let's say, and I'm just throwing out Obama, for example. If you think Obama is great, you think he has great values, he's, an outstanding Samaritan, this and that or whatever, that's who you look up to, that's the energy you like, then that's who, you go for or whatever. So I look at friendships in the same way, who you look up to and supporting those values, because at some point you see something in you that they have, which is why you go for them, right? Mm-hmm. So I look at the same thing as in friendships too. So if your friendship will be really, really great with this person, even greater if y'all share similar values and this and that, if you're talking about a long-term friendship. So I looked at it at that perspective, and I could see, well, this is why I'm not friends with this person, because this person is choosing to support a leader to run the country that we all live in, that we have to all try to benefit from. And this person as a leader is horrible. He's narcissist. He's this and that and this and that. And so you see the value of you're not seeing you're seeing that flaw in him, and you're choosing that over other things or whatever. How can I be friends with you if you support that kind of nonsense and this and that? That means that's something you see in yourself, right? So, that's why there's this division. And I thought about it. I was like, if I eliminate those kinds of friendships, based on for politics and this and that, how much more easier my life will be in terms of drama. I won't have any. You know what I mean?
Like
so I'm going to see it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Like my brother went through the same metamorphosis like you. He had a lot of people that he worked with. But during that time, he found out they really wasn't his friend. Just because he doesn't believe, he thought maybe they can sit down and negotiate and have a great
agree to disagree with politics. With politics.
And it didn't work out like that. Then he found out, because of his color, he started to look things, because he lives in Long Island, like far out in Long Island. And those people that he once hang out with, he had to eliminate them. Because he said those are the people that he does not want in his life. That negativity, that energy in his life. Because a person can't agree with you because you have different ideology towards politics. He said that can't be in his life. And he went through a metamorphosis just like yourself. He had to say, no, I'm not going to be bothered with these people. Every day he would get up and tell me this, and I said, well, you got to make a decision. And he finally made a decision, and he felt good about it. Yes, he lost his fishing buddies. He lost some of his co-workers. He lost his neighbors, but he said it was okay after a while because it was like standing up what he believed in. And
right.
And
just to add to that, when you recognize that, because this happened to me quite a bit last year, when all of that stuff happened with George Floyd and then the election, and then I was like, okay, this is happening to me, particularly Ahmaud Arbery. I had about, I would say, outside of you guys, because, we're all the same race, but I had 2 people reach out to me on social media. They sent me my DM. I have one friend, she's from Israel. She sent me this message. She says, something to the effect, I don't know what it feels like to be a black man or whatever, but I do know what it feels like to be discriminated against, and as an Iranian woman, I know what it feels like, and I just want you to know I support you, and nobody should ever be treated in the way such as have happened. I have my other friend Jenya, she's from Russia. She says she just wants to reach out, support. My friend Matt, he wanted to meet up and talk with me or whatever, see how I was feeling or whatever, because they have a distaste for, a distaste for this, discrimination and whatnot. And then, of course, at the time, who was running the country. So, I had to really, that was the first time that I actually had to really analyze who people really are,
Do you ever get
they,
any support from men?
I mean, for me, the fact that they just
Like
reached out was
black men, do they support each other in terms of when they're in crisis, or if there's triggers or mental
no,
health? Like, do they
no,
are
no,
they there
oh
like
no.
a brother,
We
like
are
a big
no,
brother?
we are so divided right now. It's unreal,
Yeah.
and within our own community, it is so bad right now. And I've been watching this thing online on Facebook. I shared it with Maricela. It's called Jubilee. They have these different exercises.
Yeah.
With,
And they
they
great.
pair the opposites together. So like the one that I really admired, it was called Black Grandparents and Black Grandchildren. And they brought them together and they had different topics and they sat down, they had civil conversations. So, and one of the things that, there was another one, I think it was called Black Democrats versus Black Republicans or something like that. And,
That was good.
it's easy to say, it's very easy to go back and point everything and blame slavery and this and that. And that is true. But I don't think people, and some people are able to work out of that mindset, that oppressed mindset. But I think people forget and underestimate how significant the damage of an oppressed mindset from all of the things that has happened to blacks here in America, from slavery to segregation. I think people underestimate that and that are still struggling. Because, I mean, I'm dealing with it now, at my job, dealing with these inner city adults, and they're just, they're struggling, trying to just get their life together. I mean, just the other day, I was at the courts in downtown Miami to see one of my students graduate from the Care Court program, and he's had issues with, child and COVID and all these things. And, aside from everything that's happened in the past, just, new issues or same issues today, it's a very, very challenging thing to break through. Thankfully, some have been able to, break through and say they want a better life, so they're going to work hard. But for many, it's still very, very challenging. So when you don't have those breakthroughs, of course, people lead to doing things and try to figure a way out to make money the best way out. They know how, so they turn to drugs, they turn to this, they turn to that, and things just get ugly. So now you have this big division between ones that want a better life for themselves and ones that are just struggling to get by. And it's the same story over and over again, but it's actually true. So as one, we are not united at all, and black men are not united at all completely. We have black men are fighting against each other. I mean, You think about it on every scale. Like, this rapper is making a diss track about this person, and this rapper is criticizing, this legend because this and that. I remember one time, this was years ago, I remember one time when Little Bow Wow, he had criticized Will Smith for the type of music he made back in the 90s.
Yeah, I remember.
And that real rap music or something like that. I mean, come on, look at that, So it's like, we're so divided, and I can't even think the last time that we were united as one. Probably, I want to say in 1995, the Million Man March in DC, and that I remember very specifically because I remember that was when we moved to Silver Spring the year before, and we were starting in public school, and I remember my dad picking us up from school, and I remember he had the day off from work because he was working for the federal government then, and he had on he had on one of those Islam type hats, I guess, with the Black History Month colors or whatnot, around his head. So he picked us up, and I just remember that moment thinking, wow, that must have been a very significant moment to have all black men, on the mall like that, and have that massive event.
So-
I think that's probably the last time we've been like really, really united. And now, like I said, we are so far divided, it's not even funny. I mean, from the way, one dresses to the way we treat women and talk about
So
people,
so from a brotherhood perspective, you don't feel supported. It's not there.
No.
And I guess I hear some guys, I guess when they're in a fraternity, when they pledge in a college, there is some type of long brotherhood, but I don't know if it lasts as long as through a pandemic and people get married and have kids and start careers or businesses and life kind of pulls you over. I know the last time we had got together, Maricela was talking a lot about transparency and women not being transparent, with each other. And I think maybe too, with black men, they're having a hard time expressing how they feel emotionally. Maybe that could be they don't have the tools. Maybe they don't have the tools to do it or know how.
But another thing, I have to take this to a historical point of view. Black men has always been displaced in this society. Remember when they first they was already in Africa. They already had land. They already had their language. They already went to universities. They already had knowledge of the world. But now you're taking from some people colonialization. Somebody comes over the ship and take you to some place that's unknown.
It doesn't educate you about your heritage.
Yeah, that you don't know.
Wipe you out.
Yeah, then you look at that right there. That's damaging right there, psychological. Then you're putting on. Then after that, you're sold. Now think of these black men that was sold to other people. Remember, they was living in Africa. They were free. They didn't know not this life, but you come here and you're sold. And you're used for economical purposes. The same thing they're being used, like rappers are being used for economical purposes. What they need to do is to push out those records. They put a large contract on them, insurance contract on them, and hey, if they don't do good, they out of here. Same thing with the guns on the street. We use guns to get rid of black men. Because why? People purchase guns. So when you're looking at the black man, why would you think, I always tell women sometimes too, black men were displaced from their whole, black men knew about the family unit, but they was taken out. And then they were placed in different plantations and they were used for breeding. Same thing. Then we look at it now, they do the same thing during the 50s and 60s with the welfare system. They do the same thing with the welfare system, that they're able to breed the kids, but those fathers are not able to stay in the house because the woman won't get a check. So when you look at all of that, when you say trauma, black men has really been traumatic. I'm so happy for some of them. I can see Danny, I can see my brother. You might have uncles that really wow, with all of that. And you have mentors in your life that they came through all of that. And I can understand now during the George Floyd, my brother went through a bad time with that, but he's like, wow, it's a dramatic, because here we go again. You're going to be demolished because you're a black man. You're going to be killed. So when you look at history, and I'm going to take it from a history point of view, what chance do black men have sometimes?
Right. And we're two competitive ones against each other. Like I said, we are divided. As black men, you have black men that are successful, and work hard and work their way up to the top, and you have black men that's out on these streets doing no good, and we're too competitive against each other. I mean, in both spectrums too. Not, even though, there are a lot of black men that work hard to get where they are, they're still competitive with each other, that they'll shoot each other down.
For example, go ahead.
It happens in politics. Mm-hmm. It happens in big corporations. They'll screw each other over. There's movies about this. Tyler Perry put a movie out called Good Deeds.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
With Felicia Rashad, and there was this one scene with the actor Brian White and him and Tyler's character, they were competitive against each other, and Felicia Rashad she's the one that, made that relationship the way it was because she showed favoritism to one child and not to the other. But the one child that didn't get the favoritism, he was smarter. So those things still happen to this very single day.
Yeah.
I even know now, and at my job with the city of Miami providing us funding, there's still unease between commissioners and this director and this and that, and they're all black. They're just all trying to screw each other over just to get to the top. And so we're divided on both ends of the spectrums in just different ways. In the lower end of the spectrum, you have violence against black men. And then in the upper end, you have, backstabbing going on.
But then they get all this. But then what happened? They're walking around. They have all this frustration. They're frustrated.
Right.
And then what happens? That frustration as a black man, you come now, and who you take it out on? You take it out on your woman. You take it out on your children. Who's gonna get that frustration? Because it's only but the burden is too big to bear. You can only carry but so much weight. Then the domestic violence is going up, especially with the pandemic. We got alcohol abuse.
Yeah.
We got gambling. We got sex addiction. We got
Well, the problem too is that, and the big problem, we have to, particularly black men, we have to break this ideology that we're supposed to be super duper strong, like all the time.
But who's portraying to be more strong? Is it the men or the women? Because the women now are alpha female, and then when you get alpha female women, then the men start to becoming more feminine. I feel like the roles are changing.
No, I don't want to say like we have to break. We have to
break that cycle.
Generational
break
curses.
This norm. We have to break the generational trauma with black men. We have to.
How do you start? So how do you every morning when you get up every day as a black man in this country, knowing everything that's this spiritual warfare that's coming against you, and the systematic oppression that's against you, and the police brutality. How do you, as a black man in this country, get up every morning and push forward?
Well, number one, I would say too, and it's hard to start from. For a lot of people, it's hard to go back to scratch and start fresh. But you have to. For me, I have to recognize myself. First of all, I'm my own individual, so I have to do what's necessary for me to get to where I want to get to, whatever my goals are, and be myself completely and be okay with that. So I have to recognize myself as an individual. And once you do that, what someone else says you should be or you should be like, all of that won't really matter. So that's the first thing, to knowing your self-worth. They talk about women a lot, knowing their self-worth. Black men have to know their self-worth as well, and that's the first start to sort of break any kind of chains. Because if you don't, if you don't know that, then how are you going to, succeed in life as a person, as a human being?
Well, that has to start on like the elementary level.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's hard to.
It's the same like the Jews, right? The Jews tell the children, you got to go to school and you got to learn your language. You got to learn Hebrew, and after that, you got to go to the synagogue, and then after you finish that, you got to learn your language and your religion. There's no time to go play basketball on the court, right? You got to do your homework, learn your culture, learn about the Holocaust, because it's never supposed to be repeated again. And they learn all of that from, elementary level.
But then you look at basketball, because basketball is like an outlet for them. Because they have that inner frustration. That's how we get our LeBron. That's how we get our different basketball players, because they were taken out of school. Some of them didn't have great backgrounds, but they was able to have mentors. Like Danny said before, mentors are very important. My brother had a mentor. He had his Boy Scouts. Boy, did he do Boy Scouts for a long time. Or he had uncles. And my neighbors were Mr. Harrell, he was very prevalent in my brother's life because, hey, my father died. He was there to pick up the pieces for my brother. Cousins that was always mentors. Mentors mean a lot. So when a black man, like my brother didn't have my father after a while, but other black men stepped up and took over. And that's what we need. It's like Danny said, like he said down there in Maryland, he went to, like in New York City, his pals. They're down there, I forgot what he said, about the police department helping them out. So I think how we can change this is mentors. And like you say, I have a friend, he's an Omega with the fraternities. Very prevalent in his community, helping the kids along, helping them with scholarship, helping them, because some of these kids don't have food, giving them food, giving them tutoring services, really being there for them. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. If we have a lot of black men that would go out there and mentor, wow, you could see the difference in the community. Because being a teacher like yourself, you can only do but so much sometimes. If I can pull 2, I'm good. But I do look for 5. But if you can be somewhat there for that person to say they can change it around, hey, that child that might come from a lower economical background could be that great person. And we see that through basketball, we do see that through baseball, we see that through football.
Well, I would say too, the biggest thing I would say too with the mentoring is exposure.
Yeah.
And that is a big key, because the problem, this is one of the problems that I see, or where we run into issues to, is that we look for specific outlets, or there are specific outlets where black men, where there's an opportunity, they're all the same outlets. There's either rap music, there's or music, that's an outlet, or basketball or football. Those are the outlets that are set, but there are so many other things that we can do, and I'm sure we have more talent, and we have to expose our black men to all of the opportunities that are out there. We're not limited just to 3 things, and that was the one thing that in the King Richard movie that was very, very important is, Richard exposed their kids to tennis. They don't have to do track and field. They don't have to do this or whatever. We can be so much greater in other things, that we need that exposure and we need that mentor piece in order to change, And unfortunately, that has to start from scratch, like Allison said. But at the same time, we have to have some type of interjection with the current black men that are currently raising or are a part of young black men's life, that we have to, let them know. We have to break this cycle and stop training our kids to just go in one particular lane. And that's why now, when you see now in today's world, you see a lot more accomplishments done by black kids, and not just black boys, but in black women as well. Like the girl from Louisiana, she became the national spelling bee champion. We can do other things. It's just that we have to be exposed, and we have to be conscious of that we cannot make our kids one-dimensional.
And what I mean? And another thing that's happened statistically, women of color are getting more, are staying in school and getting educated and getting their bachelor's and their master's at a faster rate than white women, and a faster rate than black men. And they're becoming upwardly mobile, and they're getting out of the hood, and they're getting out of the projects, and they're pulling up their kids from there, and they're like, mobily upward, or keeping up with the Joneses or whatever. And what's happening is that the men don't want to leave. The men are like, no, you go and take the kids. I'm good over here. And they want to stay in the projects with their boys because it's familiar. But it's familiar. Like Tupac. Tupac was in Beverly Hills, and he said, what am I doing? I just want to be on the corner in Brooklyn with a Philly and smoke a blunt, because it's and a 40, because it's familiar. And a lot of these black men don't want to leave the projects because, I guess, fear of the unknown, or it's familiar, it's comfortable. And that causes more division in the family too, breaking up the family.
But also, you got to understand, we talk about slavery, but that's mental slavery. That's something that's
The
very
bondage
dramatic.
change
That's
of
dramatic.
bondage.
We have to change up. Men, black women, black men have to change their mindset. Because
we have to. We've accepted that mindset, and that's not okay.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
a problem to accept it, and now we're conditioned to behave in a certain way, and it's very frustrating because when you get when we condition after all of the mental trauma and generational trauma and conditioned to behave a certain way, dress a certain way, smoking blunts, pants falling off our behind, hair looking mess, talking to people a certain kind of way, using the N-word, all of that being conditioned to that we cannot see past all that and recognize that we can be so much better. And that's the frustrating part, because here you have people that are doing it every day to try to make a better life for themselves, and you have people that are just given a reason for why outsiders look at us like we're crazy, So like Marisol said, we have to continue to apply the pressure of getting an education, because it is very, very important. Because if we don't learn our history and learn what we come from and the things that have happened to us, how can we really move forward,
But what is this? What did Bob Marley? Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Let me repeat that. I'm going to have to delete that audio out. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Bob Marley.
Yeah. So I guess it's easier once you realize you have the power and freedom to live your life in the way that you want, in the best way you can start to free yourself from some of those traumas, and once you recognize that. But a lot of people are not there in their head. They are not there, and they listen to, and I believe this, every human has, in their side of their head, they have a roommate living inside their head.
Yeah.
They have a roommate that's telling you what to do and what's good and what's not good, and you have a roommate that's telling you to do all the things that you're not supposed to do, but what you want to do, and you have to be able to learn to respect that roommate inside your head to be able to make, the right decisions. But so many people are not there. They rather, take the pain and suffering by doing something that they should not do, and they just end up back at square one,
So we're saying meditate. So where do we say mentorship, education on a elementary level, meditation.